All right, I'm going to call to order this report, the Raymore Park Board meeting for Tuesday, May 24th, 2016. I need a roll call.
Member Castleman?
Present.
Member Sepola?
Present.
Member Eastwood?
Present.
Member Harris?
Present.
Member Heath?
Present.
Member Howdyshaw?
Present.
Member Seamers?
Present.
Member Troutman?
Present.
Chairman Manson?
Present.
Director
All right.
Mustine and the rest of the staff are present.
Okay. Thank you. All rise for Pledge of Allegiance. All right, personal appearances. We have none at this time. Thank you. All right, what I'm looking at is acceptance of the minutes from the previous meeting. And that was for April 26, 2016. I'll entertain the motion.
I move to accept the minutes from the April 26, 2016 meeting.
Second.
All right, motion has been seconded. Discussion? Any amendments? All right, all those in favor, passage? All right, unanimous, 9-0. Committee reports. Finance Committee. Do we,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we had our CIP work session, and I guess we kind of all touched on it here just in our work session tonight. We went through our 5-year CIP strategy plan, laid out our all the way out to 2020, I think, is as far as it went. But we all discussed it in our work session here, and we'll go over and continue it later on in our meeting tonight.
all right, thank you, Mr. Harris. Recreation Committee and Grounds Committee did not meet. Staff reports. Recreation Superintendent, Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board knows, this time of year is, of course, very busy for the Parks and Rec Department, so I'm just going to hit on a couple of things. I've submitted the written report and some highlights on that. This week, we started our recreation baseball and softball games, so every field is being used every single night. It is jam-packed out there, so if you guys want to see some baseball and softball, there's quite a few games going. So we have that. This week also started our summer camp. So it kicked off yesterday, and so we're anticipating that to continue to build and grow. We got pretty good numbers right now for the start off, but then, of course, we always see an increase as soon as summer school is done. So we're working on that. And then also next week we have the Raymore United Clinic, pre-tryout clinic. So we're taking registrations for that all the way up through and into next week. And then the following week we have our tryouts. So we're anticipating that and starting to prepare, make all of our final preparations actually for that. So trainers are lined up and we're good to go. So those are the highlights for the sports and recreation department with the camp. I'll be glad to entertain any questions at this time.
Yeah, Mr. McLean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you know what your numbers are at for spring baseball compared to where they were last year? Baseball and softball, I guess.
Yes, we have. Yes, we know. We saw an increase of approximately 40 participants. Last year we had an increase of 150, but we still saw an increase this year of about 40. So we are right at 675 participants.
Nice. And the second question I had, where do you get more information on the Raymore United tryouts? I mean, is somebody allowed to try out if they don't do the clinic, I assume?
Absolutely. Tryouts are free. So anybody can try out any well, not anybody, let's say, any soccer player that's a youth, Mr. Harris, I don't know how well you'd fare on the.
It would not be me. It is my son. His team's breaking up this year. Coach is moving on.
Oh, yes,
so-
absolutely. We are accepting U8 and above, so all the way up. We'll be glad to try out anybody up to U19, but at this time, I mean, we're anticipating mainly U8 to U14, U15 are going to be our main target, and anybody can try out. And they don't have to go to the clinic. That's just kind of to get them geared up to work with the trainers who are actually running our camp, or our tryout, I mean, and they kind of help work on those skill sets.
Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
sir. Yeah, where can I find that information?
We have it posted on the web. We also just posted it on Facebook today. Also did a little blurb on it. I did send out flyers to all the schools that last week, or the second to the last week of school, so there
Okay.
should be, we got flyers at our office and flyers here as well.
Awesome. I also want to comment, I did umpire last night and asked some people what they thought about the new fences. Great comments from everybody except one lady who must be a grandma. She said she doesn't live here, so she didn't know what to compare it to last year, but everybody else said they really liked it. And I never really paid attention, but the black fencing does make it much easier to see through. You don't get that reflection back, and so it's much easier to see. Great work. The fields look awesome. Awesome.
All right, any other further questions? All right, thank you, Mr. McLean.
Thank you.
Park Superintendent Rulo.
Thank you. I did supply a written report, but just wanted to hit a couple key bullet points there. I do want to welcome our seasonals back to the Parks Department this year. Gus Booz and our horticulturist Michelle O'Day has returned from last year. And then we have a new seasonal, Josh Shoemaker, who just started today. So want to welcome them here, and hopefully we have a great summer. Park staff did pick up their new brush hog mower, so anxious if it would ever quit raining, we might actually be able to get out and mow some of the native areas to make them look a little nicer. And then the last thing I just wanted to tell you all about, if you guys haven't been by the TB Hanna depot lately, we got our new tables and chairs in last week. They're up there. They look very nice. Also have some what we call pretty trash cans up there also. So it's coming together good. So be happy for any questions.
It doesn't look like you have any. Thank you, Mr. Rulo. All right, Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. Mustine.
Thank you, sir. First and foremost, tomorrow, myself, Mr. Rulo, and one of our park maintenance workers, Jake Powers, will be attending a Heartland Forestry meeting at Powell Gardens. It's an annual meeting or a quarterly meeting that we go to. But tomorrow we will be touring the Arboretum and taking notes and gathering ideas for our own Arboretum at Memorial Park. So we will be in Powell Gardens tomorrow. The farmers market, I want to make a clarification. There's a couple dates floating around out there as when it starts, whether it's the first Tuesday of the month or the second Tuesday of the month. Technically, this year we are starting on June 14th as the opening night. However, we will be there on June 7th as kind of a soft start, just letting the vendors get used to the new placement, where they're at, setting up and stuff. So for all intents and purposes, yes, we will be there June 7th, but opening night officially would be June 14th. So just mark your calendars. We'll be there starting the first Tuesday in June and from the duration. Our legacy program, I just wanted to give a highlight on that. The legacy program is really moving along, and we ordered our first 2 memorial benches today, one at Good Parkway and one at hole number 1 of the disc golf course, the Como family. So we've got honor bricks already on order. We'll have an installation ceremony for that later this year, and we've also had a tribute tree ordered for that program as well. So just kind of throwing that out there that if anybody's interested, it is moving along, and we are taking those orders, and we'll be scheduling installation dates throughout the summer for those programs. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, there are no questions. Thank you. All right, we're on to old business. This is regarding item A, alcohol in the park policy review. Mr.
Thank you,
Rusty.
sir. The Alcohol in the Park Policy Review is one of our monthly policy reviews that we've been going through over the past year. Last month, we did bring the alcohol in the park policy to the attention of the board for an annual review. Some changes were made, but a couple of questions is in regards to security in Section 4 was discussed a little bit, and so what we've asked is that Chief Zimmerman come and address this scenario and address the issue to make sure that our policy reflects what the police department would like us to see have in place, and that something that they can be able to enforce. So at this time, I'll ask Chief Zimmerman if she would come up and go over this portion of it.
Thanks, Nate. Thank you, Chairman Manson, and thank you to the Parks Board for allowing me to be first. I'm flying out tomorrow morning to California, so, and I haven't packed yet, so not prepared to leave town. As Nate mentioned, we've had a conversation regarding this. I know that this is a concern of the Park Board, and obviously of residents. You get lots of folks that, come up and have strong opinions both ways about alcohol in the park. Versus times in the past, Fall Festival and those types of events where there has not been alcohol in the park. I will tell you all, and I'm sure you probably know this anecdotally, but the times that there has been alcohol in the park in recent years, and I've only been here for 4, but we haven't had any issues. But there has been a concerted effort on the part of the Fall Festival Committee and others to make sure that there are individuals there who are working for the Festival Committee, both to guard the area prior to the event and then during the time that the alcohol is being served in the park. And as Nate and I discussed this, and we've certainly done research on this within the police department to find out what other jurisdictions have done and what the ratio is of security to the number of attendees for both sit-down events like concerts and then events where people are moving around with the alcohol and things like that. So we've done some pretty considerable research. Actually, you'll be surprised maybe to hear that the policy that you all have had in place is pretty standard. There are certainly swings high and low. There are other jurisdictions that we looked at that have a much greater ratio of officers to the number of attendees. But most of the jurisdictions that we looked at rate that by risk. So when we looked at those agencies that looked at events that had the potential of having, a greater number of things that might come out of that, like disturbances or individuals getting highly intoxicated, depending on the type of music that's being played or the type of entertainment that the event is putting on. That ratio increases, obviously, with those types of events. So as Nate and I talked about this, the 1 for every 200 and then a minimum of 2 when alcohol is being served, I feel like that's appropriate. To leave that policy in place would be very beneficial. I will say, only because you invited me here and I want to give it a plug, that I know it says security guard in the policy. I do feel very strongly about that being police officers. I don't know that you necessarily have to change your policy in order to accomplish that, but for a number of reasons I do, and if I'll just take a second to talk about that. Obviously, police officers have power of arrest. If you hire private security that are not off-duty officers that don't have power of arrest, you're going to end up bringing the police department into the fray anyway. We would have to respond. We have had numerous conversations, as I mentioned, with the Fall Festival Committee about the use of on-duty officers versus off-duty officers, and the problem with relying on on-duty police officers during an event like that, whether it's alcohol or anything else, is first of all, if we're dedicating all of our attention to that area, the rest of the community suffers, and we don't want that to happen. We want to be on patrol, we want to be out there, we want to be proactive and visible in the community. But if the expectation were on the part of the Parks Board or the Fall Festival Committee or any other organizer of an event, that we were going to be dedicating all of our personnel there, and then we got called away on a big accident or a disturbance or some other event that would take place in our community, you would not have coverage at that event any longer. So I feel like security guard is probably something that's negotiable, but, you know, certainly if you have police officers and you have them there, they have that power that you would necessarily want if things got out of hand. And obviously, they have the equipment, they have the radios to call for help and that sort of thing, so. And I'm available for any questions, but that's my 2 cents.
Brian?
My question is this. Our policy, and one of our questions came up, is one guard or officer to every 200 people in attendance. It's hard to estimate how many people are going to show up. So a part of our problem was to have this policy of 1 for every 200. Next thing you know, you got 1,000 people showing up, and you were anticipating 400, so you only got a couple people. If we change the policy, and I guess maybe this is how comfortable you are, what if we change the policy to, security is required based upon approval of, Raymore PD, whatever their estimate is or their request is. Is that something that you would be comfortable with? Somebody brings a policy to us, but then they have to come to you to say, we're putting this on, and you kind of mandate the security requirements.
Well, and we certainly do. I mean, I don't have any heartburn with saying, being involved. I mean, I'm very much involved with the Fall Festival Planning Committee as well. I think that, to your point, you're exactly right. Organizations sometimes don't know. They may advertise this and get a much bigger draw than they originally anticipated. We don't have any problem being involved with the park board or even event organizers to say, this is what our anticipated attendance is going to be. Some of that's going to have to be based on past history, I would think, and if, individuals, depending on how they're advertising their event and things like that, if they have an estimate and the Parks Board would have a better level of comfort at us being involved in how much security is needed depending on the type of event. I know some of those other venues, or some of those other jurisdictions I talked about do that, high risk, low risk, and the police department does have a final say. You are, when you're getting into the pocketbook of those event planners, obviously they want to do things as inexpensively as they can. It's not inexpensive to hire police officers, but we do bring certain things to the table that you don't get with private security.
I completely understand.
Any other questions? Chief, regarding that personnel, basically, we believe in using, if we institute that where it's police officers required for this particular duty, they would be specified as off-duty. And that would be something that the department has no problem with furnishing, allowing their officers to work it.
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, we have a pretty extensive off-duty policy, things that are allowed, things that are prohibited, and we do work those events. Obviously, an event that's in the best interest of the community, like the Fall Festival, even though there's alcohol involved, we want to keep the community safe. So, allowing our folks to work at those events is beneficial to the entire community. So, not a problem with us.
Yes, Melinda.
So typically, how many do they employ on a Friday night and a Saturday night whenever it's their peak time and stuff in past years? You have any idea?
I believe, and I don't want to speak out of school, but I believe that we've had 2 there. But again, we always try to, does that sound right, Nate? That we always try to make sure that our officers, our on-duty officers, are spending time there as well. We have bicycle patrol, which are on duty, and we went there. From a community policing standpoint, it's just good for us to be out there and to meet people and things like that. So 2 that are being paid during the event when the alcohol is being served, and then they always hire some overnight folks just to make sure they guard the carnival rides and things like that as well. So again, they bring a car, they bring a police radio that can contact help if they need it and all that. But that's always supplemented by our on-duty folks.
And you feel comfortable with a minimum of 2 as the way it's written then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Based on the history of that, if we're just talking about that event, in particular, I might have pause if we were talking about some other type of event, depending on the organizers and things like that. But
Well, and that's another thing that we don't know yet is with the amphitheater and stuff like that. that's a whole new
Sure.
ballgame. That's why I'm like, okay, we're writing it now. Is that gonna be, because that can draw, I guess it could draw more than, our 400 or whatever, so. That,
Well, and I think to Park Board Member Harris's comment that if it were the board's feeling that you would play that by ear, or there would be wording that would say if the event were to, warrant looking at additional security, then, depending on the event, and it's hard to know. It's hard to look
Yeah.
into the future and know what types of events. Obviously, we, the community and the park board, we want to draw folks to our community, and we want those types of things because they'll bring in revenue and they'll bring in people to visit here. But, from a law enforcement perspective, we have to consider, obviously, the traffic and the, crowds and the noise and all those things, in addition to people maybe getting rowdy at the event, because even if alcohol's not involved, you have to consider rowdiness sometimes as well, so.
Mr. Mustine.
I would also like to add, this policy is one that calls for an annual review. Although we may not have done that in the past, that is one reason why we're here. We do have 2 facilities coming on board, especially with the municipal center back here, with anticipation of rentals for weddings and receptions that very well could entertain alcohol. We have the amphitheater coming on. So this is a policy that I anticipate staff at the staff level doing some research on how other facilities mandate and regulate that. And I would not be surprised if we don't see this again next year, anticipating the grand opening of some of these facilities, in which case, we'll be working with Chief and her staff is making sure that they're comfortable with the language on this. And it's also important to remember that ultimately what we do goes to council for final approval. So we're just putting steps in place for that final. So there's some checks and balances for any organization, and there's several steps in place that if something seems wrong, if we happen to miss it, Chief and her staff might catch it, or the council would catch it. But what we want to do is stay on top and have a policy in place where we can be on top of that right from the get-go.
Chief, I have one. Basically, as your suggestion is, we could probably change this to law enforcement officers off-duty, and that would also cover this prospect that if we needed to expand the number of officers, let's say attending needed for an event, and the department was not able to furnish adequate numbers for that, they can go outside to the county.
Yes.
And that would bring those under jurisdiction of bring those under your authority too.
Yes, because they have jurisdiction here.
All right. So what you're asking is possibly to address the issue of it actually being a security guard as opposed to definitely having off-duty police personnel.
That would be my preference, because again, if we have no jurisdiction over private security, and their method of communicating and their ability to handle those situations without involving the police would be very difficult.
And currently, as it is, we do, the Raymore Police are furnishing their officers.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief. Mr. Mustang.
So based on what the chief has said, I would recommend a motion, and this is just me giving you a suggestion, is the verbiage of where it says security guard, replacing that with off-duty police officers.
Brian.
I'd probably actually go one step further, and I would probably change that whole section. And I don't know how I'd word it, so I'd probably want to send the director back to come up with something. The whole security should be reviewed and approved for any event by Raymore PD. I don't, I think it should be that. We should use them as the experts in that regard. They can come up with the event. They'll know the proper ratio. They'll know the right people to put in place. And we should just say, hey, it's part of the policy. You got to come up with it, but let them pick and choose it. And so I don't think we should decide on how many. I don't think we decide on what kind. That should be up to the experts to do. Now, Don't get me wrong. Chairman Manson has a lot more expertise in that regard than I do, but the other 8 of us don't, that as far as I know. But like she said, other jurisdictions do it. They get to decide, and I think we should follow that same route.
I don't, in response, I don't see a problem with changing it to off-duty police personnel or law enforcement personnel. I do believe that, as it's stated, the current ratio that is stated is adequate, because if the chief sees no problem with it, I don't see where we would have one. And we are establishing a minimum to start with, plus the department oversees this anyway. They do have to review these policies and the security that we are asking to be put in place. We certainly do want to have the best possible security available for these events. So to go ahead and throw it simply back onto the department to review this policy, it's easier to give them something to start with, something to work with. And this is what we're doing. If they feel that there should be more, then they'll address that issue with us, and we can do that. And 200, 1 per 200, considering there is no history of, we have no major incidents in the last 4 years that are documented, I think that's considered a low risk. I think we're fine at the current level. Plus, it is revisable every year. Yes, Melinda?
My only concern is if we label it as just off-duty officers, if we have a large event that we're having to hire some, for a concert or something, you don't want, I don't think they're gonna wanna pay for, 10 officers to go out and, you're gonna want some people that aren't officers also out there. When you have a concert, every one of your security personnel are not officers. Sometimes you're having to hire 20, when you have a large concert, you may have to hire 20 security guards, just to run security and stuff. You don't want to limit that with just off-duty police officers, though. If we put like a minimum of 2 police officers per event, and then the other can be reviewed, I don't want to just limit it where we can only, where a promoter would come in and only be able to hire off-duty police officers for an event. You follow me?
I follow you, but I don't know if that's actually a concern. Is your concern because it should be less visible, law enforcement visibility, or what?
Oh, I love to have as many officers out there as possible, except that I know I used to run concerts. So whenever we bring in the security, we don't want to pay, a promoter's going to come in and say, well, I don't want to pay a cop what they're going to make per hour. I'd rather pay, some kids or, young adults to come in and, watch the stage and do some, some of the perimeter stuff. And then I'm going to come in and hire security guards that are actually off-duty police officers also. So they're not every single one of them, all 20 of them or whatever you end up hiring.
Eric?
Well, whenever there's a special event, we have to approve the permit anyway, and we can set stipulations to what we need for if we have security concerns. So, I mean, we can specify or have a special security application or requirements for whatever application we get as those scenarios pop up.
Yeah, and we know we're going to review again in a year, but I do want to throw that out there, so.
I don't think we're limiting it by saying 2 officers or off-duty personnel, as it
No, as long
requires
as
a
we
minimum.
as long as we just don't limit it to we can only hire off-duty police officers for every position in security. That'd be my only major concern.
Mr. Mustine?
I do want to add that any time an application comes forth, before this board even sees it, the police department's already seen it. You're not seeing anything that they don't feel like that can be taken care of. So it is addressed. What we can do is we can add some language in there that gives them basically a sign-off that they agree with that, if that's what the board wants. I think changing the language from security guard to off-duty officers, it doesn't limit what we do. It just puts a minimum level of what is required. At that point, if a new an activity or an event comes in, when we go to PD, we can meet with those organizers and discuss what their anticipated attendance record, all of those things are. So my point being is that PD does see it before we do anything with it.
Yes, Eric.
Yeah, one other thing, you could just change the last sentence of the paragraph 4, which it says a professional security with minimum ratio of 1 security guard to every 200 people in attendance. You could leave that as is, and then a minimum of 2, it says 2 security guards must be present when alcohol is being served. We could change that security guards to off-duty police officers. And then you're sort of not violating either one. You got more flexibility, and you're at least having police officers with it. You at least have 2 cops there to watch over it.
Jenny?
What I was gonna say is, Zimmerman had stated that our verbiage in here was well put and within standards of the other local municipals around here. And so I think what Eric has mentioned is just simply changing that to a minimum of 2 off-duty officers is fine for this next 12 months, because we're gonna review it again in a year. And then that way we don't have to bring it back.
Melinda?
Were we wanting to put the verbiage in, though, about the, being reviewed, or is it just not necessary since it's already being reviewed?
It's already there.
Okay.
All right, now, apparently we have several viewpoints. The thing is, we have, the question is, do we agree with the idea of having the wording changed to 2 off-duty law enforcement officers? All right, and then the other one would be, as Eric suggested, we just leave the sentence with the minimum ratio of 1 security guard every 200 people, and this would be subject to review anyway on an annual basis. Melinda?
Then I'll make the motion that we change the wording in here from a minimum of 2 security guards to a minimum of 2 off-duty police officers.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion for change of wording from in section 4, security ratios, to 2 off-duty police officers. All right, and it's been seconded. Discussion?
Yes, I'm just wondering if the wording is going to matter that we put police officers when we were talking about sheriff's officers. Is it?
Law enforcement would cover that if that was the case.
That's the, yeah.
That's what, but we have a motion as it stands right now for police officers off-duty, but what I had originally was envisioning was law enforcement officers, which would cover both local and county, and state if necessary. So if you want to pass it with the second, as it stands for off-duty, or, well, Brian,
I'll make a motion to amend the motion
thank you.
to change the verbiage from police officers to law enforcement officers.
Correct. I second that due to our lack of knowledge that there was a difference. So thank you for pointing that out.
I thought you understood that when I was using the term law enforcement. Okay.
Same word.
Apple, apple.
All right, so as it stands, it has been amended and seconded to change that wording in section 4, security ratios, on the sentence, a minimum of 2 off-duty law enforcement officers must be present when alcohol is being served. Any further discussion? All right.
We're
then
voting
last
on the
we're
motion
voting-
to
we're-
amend the original
We're voting to
motion.
amend the
Okay.
original. All right, first, so we have to vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amended change? All right, passes 9-0. All right, on the amendment, on the motion, thank you, to change the wording to 2 now off-duty law enforcement officers must be present. How say you? All those in favor? All right, passes 9-0. Sorry about the confusion, there is a difference.
Thank you for clarifying.
All right, that takes care of item A under old business. New business, the CIP recommendation, Mr. Musting.
Thank you, sir. What you have before you tonight is the recommended 5-year capital improvement program. This is a program that we have worked through in 2 different work sessions and a CIP, or I'm sorry, excuse me, a finance committee meeting. What is before the board tonight is the recommendation of the finance committee for the next 5-year CIP program. Upon tonight's approval, if the board so chooses to do so, this program will go forward to the city finance director in preparation for the overall budget for the city manager at that time, and I will answer any questions.
All right, there are no questions. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Harris.
I move to accept the 5-year CIP plan as presented.
Second. All right, motion's been seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Raise your right hand. Thank you, it passes 9-0. Thank you, Brian, for being left-handed. All right, item B, under new business, this is 2016 Recreation Park Baseball Field renovation. And Mr. Mustine.
Thank you, sir. I will call on Superintendent Rulo at this time.
Thank you. The Park Board and City Council approved the renovations of 4 fields at Recreation Park Baseball Complex in the 2016 CIP budget. As Mr. Harris had mentioned earlier in the meeting, the project is complete. It does look nice. We're getting very good feedback from it. Just wanted to say one thing, that before the project was over, park staff realized that that we needed to add a mid-rail in the front of the dugouts. To do this on every dugout, including the ones from last year. To do this, it was an extra $3,900 that still kept us within the budgeted project amount. We went ahead and did that. It did make a huge difference on how much the mesh swayed back and forth on the front of the dugouts. Just another thing that makes those fields look that much better. The project has been completed. It was completed in a timely manner and in a professional manner. Park staff and the park director, we did a walkthrough. There was a small punch list that was developed. That punch list has been completed. Staff feels the contractor did an exceptional job, and we've received several compliments from the teams that have played on the field. Staff is recommending, well, and then the budgeted, remaining budget is $311. So we stuck right in there. We got a good project done. And staff recommends moving forward to City Council with a resolution for final payment and acceptance of the project. I will accept any questions.
Mr. Harris.
I move we accept the project as final, take it forward to City Council with a resolution for final payment.
Second. All right, we have a second. All those in favor? Ms. Rulo.
I might add one more thing. If you guys are familiar with, were familiar with the numbering of the fields down there, we did change all the numbers this year, so you do have Recreation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and we have Memorial Park 1, 2, 3, and 4. For the past 15, 20 years, we never had a field 5, and everybody was looking for it, so we thought we'd clear that up.
Which I really appreciate that. But I do have one question, because I have not seen a schedule, but I did hear somebody say last night that they were at the wrong park. And I don't know what the schedule looks like, and I don't know how they read it, but they said the dumb schedule was hard to read, but I don't know what they saw. I just heard them as I was walking in, they were walking out of the parking lot. So I don't know how they're labeled or.
There are some complications with the schedule, as in if you glance at it, because there's also a Memorial Park in Belton, and since we share play games, there we've tried to distinguish Memorial Park in Belton, Memorial Park at Raymore, and ours is like, I believe it is MP 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think we did that with RP. So if we need to change that, that is fine. That's the first I've heard of it, but we did RP for the 1 through 6 at Rec Park. When they click on it, it gives you the Rec Park address or the Memorial Park address. We can put Rec 1, Rec 2 if we need to. We can still make those adjustments in there. So I don't know if they saw R versus an M or if they saw Memorial at Belton versus Memorial at
Yeah, I have
Raymore.
no idea what they saw, but
Okay.
I guess it wouldn't hurt to put something out on
Yeah.
Facebook. Say, hey, by the way, this year we've renamed our parks. Just keep an eye out for it and just pay attention to this
Yes,
change.
we'll do that.
But just
I'll
a
reach out
thought.
to the coaches as well and see if they're hearing of
Yeah,
things, do a quick little survey and see if I need to make adjustments.
yeah. I will say the family was all rushing around, so who knows? Maybe they just got
First
off work.
night.
Yeah, first night. Right?
First night.
So,
Thank you,
just a
sir.
thought.
All right. Item C, this is a budget amendment for fiscal year 2016. Mr. Mustang.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask Recreation Superintendent McLean to go through the agenda item this time.
Thank you, sir. The department is coming forward for a budget amendment for a new athletic coordinator position. This is a full-time position for the Recreation Division of the Parks and Recreation Department. Back in fiscal year 13, the Park Board and City Council accepted a change to the position to increase a current recreation coordinator position to recreation superintendent position. With that increase, the position had additional program offerings as well as increased participation and revenue for the department. The additions are laid out in the report that is given. We've seen increase with program revenue as well as rental revenue. Parks and Recreation staff were tasked to put together a proposal for additional full-time by the Recreation Committee of the Recreation Park Board. Last year in fiscal year 16, we did put that forward as an unfunded expansion item. We did not get it funded, so we were asked recently to reevaluate that. In January, one of our office assistants, which is a part-time position, did leave the department to be a stay-at-home mother. With that and with the job duties, we went out to interviews. We were unsuccessful in finding a good candidate to fill that position, so we reevaluated. We brought this information to the Recreation Committee again, and they did ask currently in this year that we reevaluate and look at adding this position. And so we have put together a proposal of how to fund this position as of currently this year. So we are asking for an amendment to amend to add an athletic coordinator. We would in turn use the internship funds and the leftover funds of the office assistant that are currently budgeted to offset that cost. Moving forward in fiscal year 17, we have laid out how to fund it as well as fiscal year 18, anticipating that in fiscal year 18, the job will be self-sustained. Are there any questions at this time? That good?
Mr. Harris.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we go ahead and do a budget amendment FY16 to, I'll say, draw down the internship and office assistant fund and add to the athletic coordinator fund of $23,200.
Second. All right, motion's been asked, second. Any discussion? All right, no discussion. All those in favor? All right, pass 9-0. All right, we don't have any public tonight to make a comment. Wish we did. All right, we're going to have board member comments. I'm going to start on my immediate left, or probably on my far left. That'll be Mr. Harris. You have no comments? All right. Mr. Taubman.
No comment. I'm good. Thank you.
Melinda?
I'm gonna follow suit. I have no comment that I can think of. I probably will later. I'll let you know.
Eric?
No.
Mr. Heath?
No, nothing.
Michelle?
Just with all the rain we've had, I think the city still looks good, so good job on working around that. Our lawn guy we use is having trouble keeping our grass looking decent. So I can imagine all that you have to do with that, so thank you.
Mr. Castleman?
An unofficial attaboy. I had some friends visiting from Cincinnati last week. Happened to drive around Raymore, took them out to Recreation Park, and they were astounded. He took 100 pictures and taken them back to the city, and he's going to make some suggestions for the Cincinnati Park and Recreation Division. Try this. They're very, very well impressed.
Thank you. Jenny?
My comment is that I am always proud of the work that the three of you do together and that how well you work and run with your crews. Everything does always look nice, and I'm very proud to be a part of this board and look forward to serving another 2 years. Three.
We'll accept 2 years. Jenny, we'll accept 2 years. All right. It's always a pleasure working with the staff. They're highly professional. They look out for the best interests of both the city and the citizens. And we couldn't do as well as we have, even with our 2-year members. Okay. All right. That being said, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion for adjournment.
Do I
I'll
have
second it.
All right, it's been seconded. All those in favor of adjournment? All right. So done, so said. This meeting is adjourned.
John.
I guess I didn't know I came in a year